Rebellion of the Damned. Section. Sympathy for the Devil. Quote, Satan is the eternal rebel, the first freethinker and emancipator of worlds. He makes man ashamed of his bestial ignorance and obedience. He emancipates him, stamps upon his brow the seal of liberty and humanity, in urging him to disobey and eat the fruit of knowledge. End quote. From Mikhail Bakunin, God and the State. In a world where the Church dictated a life of misery, conformity, and ignorance, it's no wonder, quote, the devil, as both adversary and, quote, light-bringer, had such a strong attraction among the knowledge-starved and rebellious-minded. France's early modern era gave birth to what we know as, quote, modern Satanism. Amidst the backdrop of the witch craze that swept the countryside, the major works of black ritual magic, the Grimorium Verum, the Grand Grimoire, and the Constitution of Auronius, first saw general distribution around this time. The convents and church institutions were rocked by a series of, quote, satanic possessions. And eventually, even members of the aristocracy were starting to dabble in the dark arts to advance their social positions. The devil, it would seem, was gaining influence at all levels of French society. But it was the rural poor who needed him most. Self-empowerment has always been at the heart of black magic, the promise of elevating mortals to the level of gods. For those living a life of bondage and toil, with only a vague hope for a better lot in the afterlife, this promise had immense appeal, worthy of great sacrifice and devotion. Finding no relief from their miserable lot in life through their prayers to the Christian God, many serfs looked to his opposite, the devil, for salvation. The Church feared as much, admitting that, quote, the poor are more likely to turn to the devil to better their miserable position, rather than accepting the lot in life assigned to them by God. End quote. In certain French border regions, torn by religious and social instability, it was said that many peasants were, quote, driven to despair, and, quote, prayed to the devil only, end quote. Others went a step further, pledging their formal allegiance to Satan through a binding pact. The first appearance of the diabolical pact in France occurred in 1335. In Toulouse, an accused witch named Anne-Marianne de Georgel was convicted of having entered into a signed pact with the devil and of attending a meeting, quote, that was presided over by a goat who taught her secret ways to work evil. End quote. Over the next 100 years, this belief gained wide acceptance. Pope Eugenius IV wrote to papal inquisitors in 1437, warning them of the successes of the Prince of Darkness, who was gaining influence and adherents through written contract. In 1486, the Malleus Maleficarum, the witch's hammer, the main text used by the Inquisition for the next 2 centuries, was first published, codifying this belief into a prosecutable offense according to heresy laws, and making it a moral obligation for Christians to hunt down and murder suspected witches. By pledging a binding oath to Satan, witches were practicing a form of heretical dissidence that challenged not only religious authority, but also that of, quote, rulers, judges, masters of all kind. According to the Church, witchcraft subverted the very principle of law and order. Quote, for all social relationships rested on legitimation by divine authority. End quote. This was the essence of witchcraft, at least as far as the inquisitors and demonologists were concerned. In the view of Jean Bodin, a leading 16th century French demonologist and political theorist, sects of witches represented a rebellious counter-society that sought to, quote, divert divine power to its own profit, and, quote, overturn the natural order of religion. A witch wasn't just an individual agent of malevolence, but, quote, members of an anti-church and an anti-state, the sworn enemies of Christian society. End quote and end of section.